Hi, I'm Ralph Rivas, and this is Business Sense. Today, we are joined with BPI President and CEO, TG Limcaoco. He took over the role in April 2021 from parent firm Ayala Corporation, where he was CFO, Chief Risk Officer, and Chief Sustainability Officer. So he knows a lot in being a chief. So welcome to the show, Sir TG.
Hi, Ralph. Glad to be here. Glad to be here.
So first of all, congratulations. Your appointment was announced December holiday season last year, and officially you took over the role just this April. So tell us how's that like? Kumusta, sir? It's a pandemic. You were appointed amid the pandemic. How does that feel like?
Well, first of all, thanks, Ralph, for the congratulations. And it really has been it's really a joy to be back at BPI. As you know, I've worked 3 times before at BPI, and my last posting at BPI was president of BPI Family Bank before I assumed the role at Ayala Corp as CFO. But I've always considered BPI as home for me. And so when I came back here in April, it was truly a homecoming, coming back to work with people I consider as probably the best in the industry. And probably some of my very good friends are working with me. So it's been really great. The people are wonderful. I visited, more than several branches already, despite during the pandemic, and people have reached out, them to me to them, and it's really been coming back home for me. And for me, it's been a joy. It is challenging, to be honest. As you said, in the pandemic, banking is difficult, and we can talk about why I think banking is difficult during these times. But banking is an essential service, and I'm very honored to be leading the oldest bank in the country at this time.
A couple of profiles written about you, and it was mentioned that you always wanted to be a banker. So, mga anong edad yun, sir? At what age did you realize that wanted to do banking?
Well, probably maybe at 12 or 13 years old, Ralph, when I discovered the power of interest and compounding. I'm a math major, as you know, and I love numbers. And when I discovered how money could grow by saving in a bank, in an institution, I really fell in love with it. And it really started by me walking into a bank one day, and I was young, I was a kid. I walked in by myself because I had some savings, and this wonderful lady took care of me and taught me a lot about savings. And from then on, I realized banking was about helping people. And that really started my love of banking. My father was a banker, and so I saw it there also, but that was much later in life. But really, my first engagement was with a small bank where I walked in by myself and someone helped me. Someone took the time to help me, and that impacted me a lot.
So, grabe, when everyone was probably just playing sa, you had your mindset na that you want to be a banker. Now, what's your leadership style? Tell us more about you. I'm sure our audience is curious. Is TG Limcaoco the terror CEO na kinakatakutan ng lahat? Or is he, what's the leadership style? And has it changed this pandemic?
I've learned a lot about leadership over time, Ralph. And really, but the one thing is consistent in my belief, right? A leader should walk the talk. A leader should be willing to get his hands dirty and do whatever he or she expects from the people. So if I expect my people to be able to do something, or if I expect my people to do something, I should be able to do that same thing, whether it's to explain a loan or go out and help someone paint a school. I should be willing to do it myself. So I feel I'm a very hands-on person. I try to pay attention to a lot of the details. I read a lot. I really engage the people I'm with. But in the end, a leader, only for me, my basic philosophy, a leader provides 3 things. A leader provides an aspiration, a goal that people should be very clear about. A leader should then, once you set the goal, a leader then should provide inspiration so that people move towards that goal. And once you get to that goal, the leader just says thank you and provides appreciation. And if a leader does those 3 things quite well, then you've got a very great organization behind you. And that's my basic philosophy. So I really make very clear goals. I really push the people and try to inspire them. And then when we get there, whether we fall short or not, you just show appreciation for the big team effort that the team brings. And I think people then engender loyalty both ways, and you have a successful organization. But get your hands dirty. That's my style.
Now, I mean, it's understandable. Some leaders would just pop up in an office or a department and just, wala, mangumusta lang. But with this pandemic, everyone's, working from home with the Delta variant. So, how do you engage employees at this point?
Well, yes, a little bit. That's true that a lot of our meetings are on Zoom or virtual, right? But I don't have a problem asking people that who have never engaged formally with me, because there are several, let's say, layers down, to say, oh, can we meet? Because I need to chat with you about something about a client, even without your own boss. So we arrange a call. But I do come to the office regularly. Before the Delta virus came, we were coming in every day. And I have no problems wearing a mask and going down and making sure that I talk to some people. It's not as often as I wish I could, but you do make the effort to do that. And then obviously I'll visit a couple of branches. I'll call ahead and make sure that we're all taken care of. We take the tests. Here at BPI, we take an antigen test every week to make sure. And of course, for me, it's just here and home, and you follow all the protocols. But it's important in a service business like banking. You need to engage and talk to people as regularly as you can. And then obviously with the people who work closely with me, we have very regular meetings, once a week, or sometimes with some groups once every 3 days, just to make sure we're in sync all the time.
Mhm. And everyone's talking about the so-called new normal. Pero ano ba talaga yung new normal? How do you define this new normal? And is it livable, or is it something that we just got to parang tiisin lang? And I mean, what's your experience? How do you define it? That would be that would be the
Well,
question.
remember, Ralph, things change all the time, right? Nothing is constant. We're always adapting. What the pandemic has taught us is that things that we had never thought was possible are now possible, and it's accelerated a lot of the behavioral changes. So, for example, client calls. Before, you had to, as the banker, I would have to visit my top clients. We would go to lunch. I would visit their office just to talk. And today, everyone understands that that's not possible. So we have Zoom calls, and we have come to a point where the Zoom calls are actually very friendly. We can spend a full hour just chatting, very little about business, but how things are going in life, what we think about the situation. And sometimes I feel like they're right across the table when they're really right across the screen. But that's change, and that's adaptation, and that's adapting. The second new normal is really how people have really adapted to digital technologies in terms of banking, at least from where I sit, right? Because we're a bank. People have really adopted doing transactions online. And I think it's because they were forced to. And once you're forced to, you realize how convenient it is. And the pandemic forced them to get over the apprehension. And once they tried it, they're hooked. And for us, it's shown that in many of our branches, our transaction levels have dropped 40 to 70%. And so the branches are less crowded. They're less stressed because many people have begun to do their transactions on our apps and our mobile platforms. So that's good. That's the new normal. And I don't think we go back from that.
Now, you mentioned more digital transactions. So, do we see less physical banks and more into digital, or ano ba? How will it look like in the maybe next year or in the next 5 years?
That's a super excellent question, Ralph. Right? That's one of the things we think about a lot. What is the role of a branch going forward? My belief is branches are here to stay. I don't think you can ever have a fairly large bank without physical branches, because the branches remain, in my mind, a center of education, of information. Now, it's so nice to say, yes, you can find all the information online, you can find all the education online, but really, when it comes to financial wellness, your financial concerns, it's very important that you have a face that you can talk to directly, that you can engage with, because it's about trust. It's a trust factor. So it's like if you have kaba, right? If you are not sure, you need to see the face across you to be able to get your questions answered. And I think that's the role of a branch. And so at BPI, what we're trying to do is transform our branches from what is traditionally a place where you do transactions to a place where you can get an experience or get an education about financial wellness. That's our strategy going forward. And so you'll see over the next 5 years, the role of branches changing at BPI.
So another change that we noticed is that unfortunately income in banks overall down last year, and some recovery. I mean, it's still hard to assess at this point because of the loan loss provisioning. So can you tell us more about that? What's happening with the banks, and will we see the pre-pandemic levels soon?
Yeah, that's so true, and that's what I alluded to at the start, right, Ralph? That it's a difficult time for banks, with this pandemic and obviously the economy slowing down. There are a lot of people having a hard time out there, right? Jobs have been lost, businesses are hurting, and therefore there's rising loan problems with loans, as I would call that. Now, when the pandemic first hit in March last year, a lot of the bankers, a lot of the people who followed banks, myself included, thought that we were in for a very, very hard time. And we thought that NPLs would rise to very high levels. Fortunately, the government has done the right moves. Monetary policy was very accommodative. The government then spent also to try to keep the economy going to the best they could. And so the loan defaults, the loan problems aren't as bad as we had thought. And primarily because, one, interest rates continue to remain low. And two, we haven't had as many business defaults as we had thought, because I think people are dipping into their savings out of a social contract to help their employees. So last year was a bad year because a lot of the banks took a lot of aggressive provisioning. I think the provisioning this year will continue to be fairly aggressive, although not as heavy as last year. But I think as the pandemic ends and as people return to normal and mobility resumes, because we get vaccinated, and the vaccination program of the government is going quite well. Hopefully by December, we'll come to some level where most people, if not all, who want a vaccine will have their vaccine, and therefore mobility can really come back, and the economy will then resume. And then my real belief is that things go back very quickly to normal because we've held the economy fairly well together, as best as we could. And so people will spend.
You're quite optimistic on that na last year na. Kasi others, I mean, this would be the last year that we experience this. Pero others are still expecting that it will drag on even until next year. Parang, sa tingin mo, sir, kaya pa ba if we would experience another year of similar situation?
Yeah. No, my fear, Ralph, is this is our last shot, right? We need to get the vaccination right, because people have dipped into their savings. A lot of small businesses continue to operate to make sure they can pay their employees. But these small businesses, I know for a fact, they're losing money. But the owners of these small businesses continue to run the business because, let's face it, from 2010 to 2019 to 2019, they had a good run, right? Business was good in this country. So people have held back. They've dipped into their savings. They've kept people on their payroll because they're optimistic that the economy will open up. And it's hard to rehire people, right? So people have kept their workers on the payroll. But hey, it's been 18 months already. So how long can you dip into your savings? That's my fear. And sooner or later, people will have to give up if this thing stretches out. So kailangan, we need to get over this. And that's why, the government, the private sector, we're really encouraging the vaccination program. People really should go vaccinate, as they say. Private sector has done their job. We've purchased our own vaccines. The government has done a tremendous job of getting vaccines on board. And so it's logistics na lang. And then this overcome the fear of some people who don't want to be vaccinated. We need to vaccinate everyone.
Mhm. Now, I want to push you on the point of, still on the pandemic and banking. You mentioned earlier that monetary policy has been very accommodative. Interest rates very low. And, some are expecting even an RRR cut, or,
Yeah.
other analysts are also saying na, baka too much na yan kasi, you know, uh, lending is not really moving. So why is that? So it's banks hesitant, or walang nangungutang masyado out of the fear that they can't pay it back. So what's the situation?
Well, one, let's be very clear, right? Monetary policy, as you said, is very accommodative. So there's a lot of cash. Interest rates are very low. So that's good in general for everyone. However, it's not stimulating lending or business formation because people are not clear yet what the future holds, right? And so when we talk about lending not happening, it's twofold. The banks being very conservative because we worry about whether a business can really survive if you were to start a new business today. But it's also the second part where people who want to start a business are saying, wag muna, right? I won't invest muna. I won't borrow because I don't know when this thing will lift and when business activity will resume. I guarantee you, Ralph, I'll bet with you, as soon as we're clear, as soon as mobility opens up, business will come back very strongly because the money is there, the savings are there. People just don't want to make taya yet when you don't have clarity about the future. When you don't have confidence about what will happen, you don't make investments. You sit tight, diba?
Exactly. Now, I also want to talk about the digital push. Kasi you mentioned earlier that this has accelerated the digital transformation. Pero mabagal yung internet, sir, and may complaints pa rin, di ba? I mean, all banks naman may complaints. So, ano yung naririnig mong number one complaint, and how are you guys at BPI addressing this?
Well, I think we have to disabuse that now. No? I think our internet speeds in this country have improved significantly, right? What the issue here, Ralph, now is from a banking point of view, we need to educate and people need to listen more to what the banks are saying about security, right? The number one problem we get, and I personally get when people reach out to me, are people who get defrauded by phishing, all these scams out there because they give away their OTP, they share their password, and let's face it, there's this sophisticated criminals out there who prey on human weakness. And so people have to be disciplined about that. They're very simple rules that I tell all my friends that I really ask everyone to spread. A bank will never call you to ask you for your password, your OTP, or your CVV. And you should never share your password, an OTP, or your CVV. Not to your husband, not to your wife, not to your boyfriend, not to your girlfriend, to no one. Keep it to yourself, right? The reason we send an OTP to your phone is because iyo lang yan. Never share it. Even if someone comes and asks you and begs for it, never share it. If you follow that rule, you won't get scammed. Right? That's what we need to educate people about, and that's the biggest issue I personally have with the situation now. As people move towards digital, that issue is there. So it's education issue.
Anything that we should expect on the BPI's digital transformation? Anything that you're planning? Give us a little hint.
No, I'm very excited. Obviously, we've been investing a lot in the digital platform and our technology. We have what I think we have a super platform called our mobile BPI mobile app. It's the number two most downloaded app. It's only number two to Gcash, right? And I look at Gcash and BPI as being very complementary to each other. It's exciting because you can practically do almost everything with our app as a retail banking client. In fact, we haven't really announced it, Ralph, but you can actually download the app and open an account with the app without ever having to go to the branch anymore. So completely digital. We have not really pushed it. We've gone out a little on social media with it, but not in a big way yet, as we're beginning to build the back end to support it. Because even without launching it formally, we're getting pretty good traction. So we just want to make sure that we can support the kind of interest that comes behind it. So yeah, I mean, people should download the app, the BPI mobile app, and see and open a bank account with us.
Oh wow, that's interesting. So ano to sir, picture na lang, selfie
Yes,
to
yes.
verify.
Take a picture of your ID, and then it will ask you to take a picture, and then we have a whole backend process that will verify you, and you will have an account. Yeah.
Now, another buzzword that we're hearing amid the pandemic, cryptocurrencies. Your
Ah,
thoughts on it?
ah. Okay. Be very careful.
Kasi sir, just a little background. We had a guest here just last week saying that cryptocurrency will be everywhere, even NFTs or the non-fungible tokens, things like that. Very optimistic yung outlook, but of course I read up on your thoughts about it. So,
Well, let's be very let's be very clear on cryptocurrency, Ralph, right? There are two kinds of cryptocurrencies. There are the cryptocurrencies that are backed by physical assets, right? So, for example, you have cryptocurrencies that are stable because there's a dollar behind every dollar on the cryptocurrency. That's one. You have cryptocurrencies that are, you have what they call central bank digital currencies, which are theoretically currencies, which is the new line of thought, which are current cryptocurrencies issued by a central bank, right? That's a new line of thinking. China has launched it, but as far as I know, practically all the central banks in the world are looking at what they call CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, right? So those are cryptocurrencies. I think those have legs. Right? There are other things like cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, which have value today, and they have value today because people are willing to pay for them, right? And I grant you, it's an asset class. If you want to invest in it, go ahead. I wouldn't, because it's an asset class that has no backing other than people saying, I'm willing to pay for this, right? So that's my view. Are they a legitimate currency? I don't think so. Are they an asset class? Yes. Are they an asset class TG Limcaoco, would invest in? No.
ano ba? It's very risky, very sentiment driven, even wilder than stocks.
Well,
Kaya ka ba hesitant on that?
yeah, and that's the weird thing, right? If it was a true asset, then there should be rhyme and reason to its value, right? But what is the rhyme and reason to the value of, let's pick a name, right? Of Bitcoin. What drives its value? No one knows. Then that's not an asset I would invest in. Is it an asset? Yes. Right? Is it an asset I would invest in? No. Right?
What about NFTs? We haven't heard your, I
Yes.
haven't heard your thoughts on it. Now, digital art, but there are also people saying it's not just art. It's going to be an ID, anything that represents an image. Basically, it's a potential revolutionary concept.
Yeah. Well, it's revolutionary in the sense that, okay, it's digital, right? So it's a digital asset The problem with digital assets is they can be duplicated easily, right? And so the NFT is saying that fine, we can have many versions of this asset, but only one will be marked as the original, right? So the question is, what is the original worth to you, and why is that asset valuable to you? Does it give you visual pleasure? Wouldn't the duplicate give you the same visual pleasure, right? In the sense that both of them have the same physical representation. So I'm not sure. In my mind, I'm still unclear about NFTs, to be honest. I mean, I'm such a digital guy. I should be the guy who loves it, but I also know how easy it is to duplicate things digitally. So and what gives something value is rarity, right? And scarcity. If you don't have scarcity, how can it get value?
Interesting. Kasi interesting just to give perspective and maybe balance all the hype out there, di ba, sir?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and another thing that I want to talk to you about is green financing. What are the updates? What about coal? Do we your thoughts on coal, and will it ever go away in BPI's books?
Well, we've been very clear about where we stand on coal financing, Ralph, right? First, let me say that I personally think we need coal as a base load for our country, right? We're a developing country. We just can't give up coal overnight, right? But that said, there's a different, you need to think about it also from a financing point of view. Where do we move forward? So for BPI, we've basically said that today we recognize we have a current portfolio of coal assets. We have committed to bring that portfolio down to 50% of its current level by 2026 and to 0% of its current level by the end of 2032. Right? We have also committed that we will no longer finance greenfield coal plants going forward. But of course, existing plants which are already there and are critical to our base load, we can provide them with working capital, provided we bring our levels down to zero by 2032. So our mind, that's the way we're looking at coal financing. But we're talking about sustainable financing and sustainable business, Raf. It's not all about coal financing. I think people get hung up and say coal, coal, coal. It's not all about coal. You need to start thinking about ESG, really talking about the environment, talking about society, making sure that you take care of the community where you operate, taking care of the people who work for you, taking care of your clients, trying to push your clients in the right direction, right? And making sure despite all this, right, you take care of your shareholders, you follow regulations, you're a good citizen. So to me, that's what ESG is. And at BPI, we're like ESG plus E. The second E is to make sure that there's economic sustainability.
Mm, fair point, fair point. But what's the most exciting field for you right now? What's the next big thing? What are you looking at? Maybe BPI is seriously considering at this point, or in the near future.
No, you know what excites me a lot, Ralph, is the SME sector. Even when I was running Family Bank many years ago, I really like the SME sector, and because they're such a key part of our economy, and yet there's so many people in it that trying to gather that business is a challenge, right? And for us, to me, my thinking there is the SME sector, we can really penetrate that sector by providing them digital tools to run their business better. And it's exciting for me because I've seen how the SME sector has pivoted very quickly during this pandemic by selling through different means. A large retailer, a large business, finds it very hard to change their business model. But these SMEs, they change their model very quickly because they can adapt. And so what we're doing is we're going to be providing them tools to run their business better digitally. And hopefully that brings them on board as clients. And because they're working with us as partners, we can provide them working capital because we see their cash flows. And in the end, if you've got strong cash flows, a bank can really support you by providing you capital to make your business grow faster. So towards the end of this year, we're going to launch a very nice app for SMEs, which we believe will help businesses grow faster.
Mm. Now, I believe SMEs, owners are probably watching this right now. So, what will it take for BPI to approve their loans? What do they need to show?
No, it's really about when we look at when we evaluate loans, Ralph. We really look at first. Me personally, you look at the character of the business person, so we get to know them quite well. And two, we look at the business model and the cash flows that operate from it. So for me, it's important that they bank with us, because if they bank with us, we get to see how the cash moves in their accounts. We see the sales come in, we see the expenses go out. And for us, it's very easy then to say, oh, this business can grow so much faster if we provide them more capital so they can build up inventory or they can make an investment in a new machine. That's all it is. We just need to see the cash flow. And that's why in our thoughts about SME, we will give them apps that allow them to handle their cash flow better, because it also gives us insight into their cash flow, which makes the process of loan approval easier. So it's an exciting thesis we have that we're going to launch by the end of this year.
Okay. Now, sir, susulitin ko na, sir, yung time period is before the end of the year, or what quarter? Third, fourth quarter?
Fourth quarter,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, looking forward to that, sir.
Yeah.
Now, before we let you go, we know that you're a true banker at heart, but when you're not at work, what do you do? How do you stay, motivated? What do you love doing most? What do you do? How do you unwind?
Well, two things. I really love Netflix. The amount of shows that they're both on the light side, the entertainment side, but also a lot of the documentaries on Netflix are just a wonderful trove of information. But I do love reading also. I love reading about ways to run a business, ways to communicate, ways how to try to understand people's behavior. And that's what keeps me very engrossed and very challenging, because I read books and I see, how does this apply, in the bank? How can we apply this in the bank? How can I apply this when I work with my people? And when you talk to the people who work with me, it's always like, oh, TG made this kwento again because he read it over the weekend.
Any recommendations? Baka naman, any recommendations, films or series that you're watching right now, books that everyone must read?
Well, here's a book, Ralph. Like you're a communicator, right? One book that really, really helped me in terms of the ability to communicate with people in a speech, make sure that ideas are retained and people remember what you say, is a book called Made to Stick. Made to Stick. It's by two brothers, Chip and Dan Heath, I think that's their name, right? I read it maybe many years ago. I still keep a one-pager summary of it by my desk, and I've shared it with people who work with me. I say, if you don't want to spend the time read the book, read this one-pager. It's an excellent one-pager on how to communicate ideas. That's like one of the books that has changed my life.
Okay, so I'll look it up right now and check it out. And on that note, thanks so much, Mr. TG Limcaoco, President and CEO of BPI, and I'm Ralph Rivas. This has been another episode of Business Sense. Thanks for watching.